Hi everybody, welcome. Mrs. Leonard here. I'm going to give you a little demo today on very easy cupcakes. A lot of you have mentioned that you wanted to learn how to make cupcakes. So a great way to start is by using a box cake. So I chose strawberry. You can pick obviously any flavor you wish. You get a bowl out. Alright, so let's make sure we have all our ingredients. We have our cake mix, and on the back of the cake mix it says we need 1 cup of water, which we'll get from the sink, a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, which I have, and 3 eggs. So let's get started. Step number 1 is to preheat the oven. So I already preheated this oven. On average it takes about 10 minutes to preheat an oven, so you want to make sure that you do that the very first step, because there's chemical reactions that are happening when you're mixing your dough or your batter, and then you put it into your cupcake tins, and then it needs to go into the oven to finish those reactions. So if you don't have your oven preheated, you're not going to get, the best quality cupcakes or cake or, bread, anything that's a type of dough that needs to go into the oven. So that is done. I preheated it to 350 degrees, and I also put in our cupcake liners. It says it makes 24, so I have those all ready. And then step number 2, very easy. It says mix the cake mix and your 3 ingredients, water, oil, and eggs, into a mixing bowl. So I'm going to open this up. Pour in our batter, our dry ingredients, and next let's measure the water. So you want to use your liquid measuring cup to measure your water, and you need 1 cup. So I'm just going to step away and measure from the sink. I'll be right back. Okay, so when you measure liquids, you want to do something I call kitchen aerobics, and that means set it on a flat surface, wait till it stops moving around, and then do kitchen aerobics, get down at eye level, and measure. What you don't want to do is hold it up like this, because it's not perfectly level and it's not perfectly sturdy. So always set it on a flat counter or surface to check it. So what I'm going to do before I start adding in our liquid ingredients is create a well in the bottom. So, I'm not sure if you can see it, but you want to make a little well in the bottom so you can pour your ingredients down in. Alright, next we need a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, so you're going to use the same liquid measuring cup because this is a liquid as well. And do your kitchen aerobics, and we need a 1/2 cup. So I always like to find the line that you need to measure to before you start. Alright, 1/2 cup of oil. We'll pour that into our well with the water. Next, the 3 eggs. So in a recipe, if it just calls for 1 egg or just says eggs actually come in different sizes. So the standard size for baking is a large egg. So that's usually what you buy at home anyway, but there are different sizes in the grocery store. So it's important that you're using the correct one. Now most people think you crack an egg on a sharp surface, like the edge of the bowl or the edge of the counter, but actually you want to crack it on a flat surface like the countertop. If you crack on a sharp edge, it kind of forces the shell into the egg, so when you pull it apart, it will you'll get a shell. So I'm just going to pull the garbage can over. So crack, and now where that crack is, you want to pull it apart. The number 1 thing that people do is they kind of squish it and squeeze it. You don't want to do that. And if the first time you don't get a good crack, There's our oven preheating. If the first time you don't get a good crack, crack it just a little bit more. Definitely start softer. Don't just, start really hard. All right, so I always crack in a separate bowl. That way if you get a shell, you can pick it out in the bowl before it'd be a lot easier to pick it from this bowl than it would be this bowl. Next, I'm gonna rinse my hands because there is a common foodborne illness that is linked to raw eggs and that we learned when we covered safety and sanitation. And that microorganism that could be lingering on my hands right now is called what? Salmonella is the correct answer if you guessed that. So I'm just going to dry my hands. And then we're going to add our eggs in to the well with your water and oil. Now, so that's step number 2. Now it says we can mix this 2 different ways. We can use a hand mixer, but a whisk works just as well. So we're going to mix it for about 2 minutes. So start in the middle because you want to break those eggs up. And you want to start slow. And then once your ingredients start getting mixed in more and more, you can mix a little bit faster. So this is considered a quick bread, which we will discuss, but a quick bread you don't want to overmix. So definitely don't overmix more than the 2 minutes. Now, if you wanted to make a cake, you would pour this into your ready cake pan. And also, if you do make the cake from the box, please be aware there's different baking times. So your cakes come in different, your baking pans come in different sizes. For example, this is a 9x13. So if you were going to make a 9x13, you would bake it for 28 to 33 minutes. But we're not going to use that. So that's very important because the baking time, you don't want to burn your cake and you want to make sure that you bake it enough. For our cupcakes, it says 12 to 17 minutes. So I think we're done with our whisk. I'm going to put that into the sink. Our batter's all finished. Now it's time to put into the cupcake tins. So it says we should get 24. So that's usually 2 pans, and your goal is to get 24. Now if you get 23, that might be okay, but if you only get 12, that means you filled your cupcake tins way too high, because remember, your cake is going to rise. And I'm going to get a different tool out. Your cake's going to rise when you put it into the oven. So if you fill your cupcake tins too high, as they're rising, it's going to pour over the batter. So about 3/4 of the way, between halfway and 3/4 of the way is perfect. And you don't want it dripping all over your cupcake tin because that will burn. So I'm you can see I'm like scraping it off the side of the bowl before I pour it out. If you do get it on the metal part of your baking or your cupcake tin, I definitely recommend getting a wet paper towel and wiping it off before you put it into the oven. So definitely take your time here because you want them all to be filled up the same way. So a thing with baking to remember is the same size bakes the same way. So if you're making biscuits, for example, you want to make sure all your biscuits are the same size before you put them into the oven. Because if you have a super tiny one and a big one, that big one's not going to be done baking, and that small one's probably going to burn. So the same size, bake the same way. All right, so one tray's done. So if you get to the end and you are running out of batter, you're just going to take from the other cups to fill up the rest of the cups. I definitely maybe might have to take some from there. I'm running a little low now. And I still have 6 more to go. All right, so to get the extra batter out of here, do you know what kitchen tool we'll use to scrape the sides of the bowl? If you said rubber spatula, you guessed correctly. So a rubber spatula will scrape the sides of the bowl so you can use all of that yummy batter. So that'll get us like one more whole cupcake. Okay. So now, since I have some left over, I have 4 I need to fill. So what you're gonna do is take from the ones that might be a little too high and add to the empty ones. Now you probably don't want to do this step, but this step is important because, like I said, if we only made 20 cupcakes, the cupcakes are going to rise and they're going to be too big and they're not going to look as pretty. So the 24 is like the perfect amount, and they'll sit nice and perfect. All right, so we're almost have them. All right, one more we need to fill. All right, this might do it for us. Perfect. All right, so now we have 24 cupcakes. The yield of a recipe is how much the recipe makes. So in this case, the yield of this recipe would be 2 dozen or 24 cupcakes. So before you put them into the oven, you can just get a paper towel and just wipe the sides where you might have a little bit of batter. Okay, so now it's time to put these into the oven. Before I put my cupcakes into the oven, and you can do this with a cake pan as well, I always kind of just shake like this and give it 2 little taps. Now now it's ready to go into the oven. So, before you put it into the oven, just know every 10 seconds your oven door is open, it drops 100 degrees. So, you want to make sure you don't open that oven door, especially while it's baking, but also not until you're ready to put them into the oven. When you're baking, you always want to put your baked good on the middle rack, so it's usually right in the middle, not on the very top or not too low to the bottom. You want it right in the middle so it's nice, perfect, even heat. So I'm going to stand to the side of the oven because right now it's 350 degrees, and when you open that door, that heat's going to come flying out. So if you stand to the side, you can let the heat out and not burn your eyes or burn your face. So stand to the side, and you want to make sure your oven door is at a 90-degree angle, and pull out that bottom rack. Always use oven mitts or pot holders, and keep your hand on the door all the way so it doesn't slam. And if you remember, I said we're going to set the timer. It's going to take 12 to 17 minutes. You always set the timer for the lowest amount of time, which is, in this case, 12 minutes. Because your recipe's telling you, I need at least 12 minutes, but because every oven is different, you might need to add another minute or two. So, we'll do the toothpick test when it comes out of the oven, and if that toothpick comes out nice and dry and crumbly, that means your cupcakes are finished. And you would do the same with a cake as well. So again, you don't want to open the oven door. Always try to use your oven light, and you can see them rising and baking. They'll be done in about 12 minutes. Once they cool, I'll come back and we can icing them. All right, see you soon.